Hey everybody, this is Alex again, leading discussion 6, looking at organizational change and leadership process. And so for this week's question, please reference table 10.2, which is found on page 181. Now, the book notes that the research around these strategies that are listed in this table, is regarding strategies of communicating about change. And specifically, the researchers who identified these strategies, they thought that the best approach, the best strategy, is underscore and explore. They also say that the worst strategies are both spray and pray, as well as withhold and uphold. So that is what the researchers say regarding these different strategies that they have identified in table 10.2. So the first question is, do you agree that underscore and explore is the most effective strategy? So explain why or why not. Then describe a situation where underscore and explore would actually be a bad strategy to choose, right, based on the situation. The next question is, do you agree that spray and pray and withhold and uphold are the least effective strategies? Again, explain why or why not, and then describe a situation where one of them would actually be an effective strategy, right? Like based on the situation, again, it would actually be a good strategy to choose. So the reasoning for this question is that change is complicated, and effective change management requires a curation of different styles and approaches in order to make a dynamic approach that's actually going to be effective. So with that being the case, we should always work to acknowledge the strengths and weaknesses of all the tools at our disposal, and understand how situations really affect and dictate what kind of strategies are going to be useful. So to start, I partially agree with the researchers, and then I think underscore and explore is the ideal strategy. But there's a lot of sort of conditions around that. In theory, this approach is best because it gives employees ownership over the problem and the solution. And as a result, I think there is likely to be a lot less resistance to the change. But with that being said, there are a lot of situations in which this approach might not be practical. So one example is maybe a really deeply technical issue. And so the average employee is not going to really grasp the causes and effects and the specifics of this problem. So in that case, it would probably make more sense to leave the decision making to a small group of specialized employees, because they're going to better understand the problem and reach a more reasonable solution than if you were to open it up to everybody, most of whom don't understand the problem at all, right? Regarding the next question, I again partially agree with the researchers in that I do think withhold and uphold is the least effective strategy, but I think spray and pray is slightly better. So I don't think that they're both equally bad. I think just because, spray and pray is lazy, it's kind of messy, but that's what makes it ineffective. Whereas the withhold and uphold is purposefully adversarial. Organizational change is something that affects all employees. So the idea of creating division and using secrecy just seems to be, begging for resistance. So, a specific example where spray and pray might actually be useful is maybe a situation where the change has to be made in a very short amount of time. It's a very quick reactionary change that has to be made. And so in this case, the organization just simply doesn't have the time or resources to enact one of these other more inclusive strategies. So with that being the case, I think that releasing all of the information would be better than not releasing any of it at all. So let us know what you think. Do you agree with the researchers and which strategies they identify as the best versus the worst? Why or why not? Why not? And for the strategy you do think is the best, tell us a situation where it's not going to be good. And for the strategies that you think are the worst, think of again, a situation where they might actually be useful. Again, these types of changes and problems are very complex, and the situation is going to dictate a lot of what's practical and a lot of what's effective. So the more that we can be open-minded about how the situation plays into which strategies are going to be best, the more effective we could be as agents of change. Thank you. Look forward to seeing everybody's responses.